And now we have to turn to FDI, the figure which keeps disappointing us since the big projects have been drawing to an end.
Yes, so true, unfortunately. Figures are no better for the first quarter of 2020 as well, even more aggravated because of the uncertainties on top of other problems that keep foreign investors to invest in Georgia at this point. Namely, in the first quarter of 2020, the volume of foreign direct investment in Georgia amounted to 165 million USD, which is almost 42% less compared to the same period of 2019. So as all of us see, the decline is quite significant.
Now it's my turn to agree with you. So that's why a journalist of Checkpoints of Forbes Georgia, Tamta Chijavadze, interviewed ambassadors of Israel and France in Georgia who assess Georgia's business environment and also talk about potential of exporting Georgian products and goods to their countries. Ambassadorial in Checkpoints.
I think the Georgian economy has improved dramatically in recent years and has done a wonderful job in attracting foreign investment, especially in view of the free trade agreements with the EU and other countries. But it still has a long way to go in becoming a real magnet for foreign investment. And there are a few difficulties. First difficulty is the fact that it's a very small population, only 3.7 million. But that in itself is not the biggest difficulty because there are other countries with small population. Israel has only 9 million, Hong Kong has 6 million. But the problem is that the purchasing power, the free available income of Georgian citizens is quite low. The GDP per capita in Georgia before COVID was under $5,000, which means that Georgians are not consumers, big consumers of foreign exports into Georgia. So this is why Georgia is still not one of the top investment destinations for foreigners. But what we can do and what Israel has been doing is trying to transfer production lines from Israel to Georgia because labor costs are quite low here. So until very recently, many Israeli companies, industrial companies, the same as European or American industrial companies, they would move their production lines to Vietnam or China or the Far East or India. Georgia is much closer to Israel, only 2.5 hours, and we share the same culture, the same mentality. In Israel, we have 100,000 Israelis who speak Georgian, so there shouldn't be any reason why, instead of moving the production lines to the Far East, we should move it to Georgia, and there are already some Israeli entrepreneurs who are doing it. Now, in this respect, the most dramatic and the most important step that is about to happen is the launching of our bilateral Chamber of Commerce, Israel-Georgia Chamber of Commerce. It was already registered in Israel last month, and it will be open in Tbilisi in September, I hope.
One way where we need to improve our capacity to work is to be more specific about the needs of Georgians. It's not just saying Georgia is a nice place in general and a nice place to do business. I think that's true. But that's not enough to get somebody to come. We need to be more specific about what people are ready to buy, what people are interested in developing, what projects are interested in doing in terms of things that a French company can certainly be interested in. And then the French company comes to Georgia. And once it is here in Georgia, it sees how Georgia is very European in its outlook and its culture. It sees that it's a good place to do business, and then suddenly they start investing there and doing more and more. That has been the path to success of some companies. And so we need sometimes, I think, to target more precisely our messages and to make specific needs or specific interests or specific things that Georgians want to do better known on a more precisely by going to French fairs, by targeting more precisely the sort of French actors that we want to bring. And the other question is the business environment in Georgia. Generally, it's a very good business environment. The assessments in the World Bank rankings show it quite a lot. I think Georgia has proven a very good reformer, and now we need to make sure it is a very good performer. Many countries are still at the stage of proving themselves to be good reformers. I think Georgia now has passed that stage, but needs to be a good performer. And where the question is some of the laws, most of the laws are on the books, but there are several others that still need to be adopted. There's also the secondary law, and it's more generally a matter of developing the right culture. When it comes to fairness of competition, fairness of public tendering, fairness of intellectual property rights, all these things, it's not just a matter of having the right law, it's a matter of having the right culture. And these things don't come in a minute. They are built more and more, and Georgia is much more advanced than many others on those aspects, but there's still quite a lot to do. I think the EU has put in place quite a lot of programs to bring not only the laws but also the training and the culture, so that people don't think there's another way of doing business or another way of practicing business. So far the results have been very promising.
For now, the volume of our bilateral trade is quite modest. For example, last year in 2019, the overall balance of trade, volume of trade, which means both exports and imports between our two countries, was around $42 million US, which is not very significant. However, it's worth remembering that much of our bilateral trade doesn't appear under the heading of Georgia-Israel bilateral trade because it goes through a third country. So our bilateral trade is actually much higher than what appears in the official statistics. So far, the main ingredients of Georgian exports to Israel are optical machines, some agricultural products, wine, mineral water, borjomi of course, nuts, but the biggest part of the Georgian exports to Israel are byproducts of the oil industry. Now, all of those export products are useful, but I think the potential for expansion in the future is in either one of two directions. Either low added value products or very high added value products. What I mean is, for example, if Georgia is successful at utilizing its brain power, all those young people who are now specializing in computer skills, and they are significant in creating a local ecosystem for innovation, for high tech, then this is high added value kind of industry. And then even though in absolute number of products you don't increase it, the value of the products is much higher. This is one direction. The other possible direction is the exact opposite. More agricultural products that are very cheap, but you need a bigger bulk in order to change the statistics. So of course, Georgia is famous for its vegetables, fruit that are still organic, very tasty, wonderful flavor, unlike most agricultural products that you get nowadays in developed countries that have a longer shelf life and they look more beautiful, but the flavor is gone. So, and finally, of course, Georgian wine has a potential of being extremely attractive to Israeli customers.
The field of food products is a field where there's quite a lot of standardization and normalizations. It's a field where quality matters very much, because the European consumer is very demanding in terms of quality and of food safety. It is a matter where finding the right market and the right price is very important, and so market research and market strategy is also very important. So the three examples that I gave in sort of French partners that can help develop your presence in the French market or in the European market is definitely something that is important. In some respects, the presence of many Georgian actors in the French market is something new, so they're discovering the place and they want to develop, and I think it's very welcome. I think there's a lot of potential on the basis of the DCFTA, the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement between Georgia and the European Union. But there's one thing to have the agreement and the low tax and the principle of openness. It's another to develop the respect of standards, to find your niche, to find your right customer. Take a product like wine, for example. It's not easy to find your place in the French wine market because it's already a market that is quite established with good French production, Italian and others. So it's a crowded market. It's not easy to make your place. But the Georgian products have arguments to make for their quality, for their interest, for their interesting nature, for their history and all that. So they can find a customer.